Hello and welcome to episode 110 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
I'm James Whittingham. This week, Tesla chargers might cost a quarter of the competition. Maybe I should buy one and put wheels on it.
The Canadian province of Quebec has enacted a new law that will halt all new hydrocarbon production. Now, if only they could reverse the ban on the Stanley Cup being awarded to the Montreal Canadiens.
Do rear-wheel EVs work in snowy climates? Does the Pope EV in the woods? Of course.
Toyota is finally launching an EV in spring 2022. I guess being mocked on this podcast was more than they could take, and they finally came.
All that and more on the return of the Clean Energy Show.
So first of all, James, I've got a cold this week, so I might sound
it's COVID.
A little bit funny.
It's COVID. Admitted it's COVID.
It's not COVID. I have been testing.
It's not herpes. Please, ma'am. Really, honestly.
And even if it is COVID, I'm pretty sure it doesn't transmit over Zoom.
Pretty sure. Well, take extra precautions, people, when you're listening to the podcast this week, because I'm certain that it's got to be COVID. There's no colds going around, Brian. What are you talking about? There's no colds.
Yeah, well, it certainly brings it home that it could have just as easily been COVID. So far, lucky and have avoided that.
I hate colds so much that I'm willing to wear a mask for the rest of my life. I hate getting sick.
Oh, it's the worst.
I haven't had anything. No, that's not true. I had a cold at Christmas. In fact, we all had colds at Christmas, and they were bad for some of my kids. My son had it bad, and my daughter had it worse the day she got her second vaccine shot. It was like a reaction to it. But the health department on the phone thought that she actually had COVID. And my son, being at university, he says everybody else has had COVID in his class. And it's really bad in that city where he is. So I'm just wondering, maybe we all had it, he said, hopefully. I mean, that's the hope, right?
Yeah, but you were testing, though.
We were testing, but we weren't testing that well. And they were saying that the Omicron was not doing well with those tests. And we weren't doing our throats at the time. So yeah. I don't know. Let's forget about COVID for now. Last week we had an interview, our first interview on the show. And then, of course, now I've got a whole bunch of emails from people saying, please put us on an interview. I'm representing somebody who has a major breakthrough in X, Y, and Z, and you should have he or she on the show. And it's no. We don't do interviews. We can't. We're not set up to do that right now. And it's a lot. It's a different show. I mean, one day it's possible we could have an extra show or something that has the interview portion. But right now we're a conversation about the week's climate news. This week we got it's been the worst spring ever, Brian. We got a horrible dump of wet snow. And you know how it falls off my solar panels 2.5 stories off the house? Yeah, because it's all one slope leading south. Well, it's downright dangerous. We're thinking of putting out a sign. Plus, my kids were home this weekend, and I dared them to go out. My partner was going to do some spring cleaning and put some stuff outside, but it's just too dangerous to leave the house.
Too dangerous.
It's just nasty business. And I could look at my app and see what panels are a little bit dark and know that there's still more to come, and advise people to avoid the area at all. Like they're making it's huge noises, and the sun gets blocked out partially. It's like the sun blinks for a second, and you know something's crashing to the ground.
And it probably looks like a body has fallen from your roof.
Yeah, it has. But I did a calculation of my solar last year and what it would translate into as miles and kilometers for driving an EV in perfect conditions without heat or air conditioning. And it was 16,000 miles or 26,000 kilometers. That's from a small system. Now, we did have a good year of solar for whatever reason. Lots of sunshine last year, but it's a small 3.3 kilowatt system. And that's for like a 5 liter per 100 kilometer car, like a Nissan Versa or something like that. And I calculated what that would be in gas at current prices where we live, which is higher than most places because we're in Canada. It was $3,100. Or practically a third of the cost of the panels. Not that, I wouldn't be buying electricity from the grid if I didn't, pretty cheap anyway. Brian, I've got some updates to previously discussed stories that I would like to talk about before we get on with the show and there's been so much because I've missed us. It's been 2 weeks since we've talked the talk. So we're back, people. we're back.
Yes, and huge thanks to Yuri Tereshin for joining us.
Absolutely huge, and we did get a lot of feedback from people saying they love the show, so thank you for that. The average California gas price is now $5.74 for regular gas per AAA, but that's only that's for a gallon, and that's only $1.50 a liter. We're paying around $1.70 here, and it's over $2 on the West Coast, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and another thing is, I got to bring it up. And I know you don't like talking about this, but Elon Musk has been bothering me. I mean, he's really been bothering me. I don't own a Tesla. Maybe it's different if you own a Tesla. You can do no wrong. I love Elon. I think he's necessary to the survival of the planet. Don't get me wrong, but he's pissing me off. What do you think about the trying to buy Twitter and then backing off the board and now trying to do a hostile takeover? I know you think it's a distraction. Do you have any further comments on it?
No, not really. I mean, if he knows how to fix it, then maybe it's a good thing.
You know what the types of things? First of all, he blocks people. He blocked Fred Lambert, the editor or the writer for Electric, because he wrote a mildly critical and truthful story about Tesla. But Mr. Musk couldn't handle a little bit of criticism, which was true and fair, and he blocked him. So free speech advocate, bite my ass, Elon. You are not a free speech advocate, and you're leaning towards authoritarianism. I think that this could be a problem. I don't like where he's going politically and taking over the platform. And you know who's going to go back on there? The former president of the United States, who I don't care for. And I can't stand everybody talking about his stupid tweets all day. I mean, you turn off the news, but that's not going to make the platform any better.
Well, yeah, it's unfortunate because it tends to dominate the conversation, but that's exactly what's happening now is Elon has a power to dominate the conversation, and that's what's happening because we're talking about it.
Well, he's losing a lot of fans. I mean, he's gaining some on the other side of the spectrum, the political spectrum, but they still don't like electric cars. There's still BS going around. There was a populist politician in Canada, Bernier, who tweeted out something. It's 2040. We're accepting 2 million immigrants into the country, and everyone's driving an EV, and it costs so much that we don't have any leftover money because we're forced to buy expensive EVs, and we're all living in tiny little skyscrapers because there's no room because of the immigrants. I know he's not that stupid. He's sort of baiting people and making them angry and doing what populist politicians do, but it's stupid. Already, the luxury class is cheaper on paper to drive than non-EVs. And if you figure out the cost of ownership, it goes down the line even further. Well,
we live in an attention-based economy, and whatever gets the public's attention is wins, I guess.
You know, they started making Bolt EVs. I'm trying to get a Bolt EV. They started making them last week at the beginning of April, first Monday in April.
Yeah, production had been shut down for a while.
And being on the forums, the American forums, by the way, it's so weird to be on an American EV forum where there's a new post every second because there's just so many people. There's 9 times the population, but it seems like there's 30 times the EV owners, perhaps because it's a warmer climate. More money and all that. But people were really upset by that, the Bolt owners, because they're all waiting for new batteries. And they've been waiting for a long time, and their cars have been limited to charge to 80%. So they don't have the full use of their cars, and they're waiting for these batteries. And now people are getting new Bolt cars, which I'm hoping to do, possibly. There's an auto show this weekend for the Earth Week festivities for Drive Electric Week, rather, and it's they're all over North America and other parts of the world too. So I'm hoping to actually sit in a Bolt owned by someone else this weekend, Saturday.
Yeah, and this is the battery replacement program that they had to come up with because some of their batteries were catching on fire. So not enough batteries to go around. This is going to be a common thread that we talk about in the next several years.
Some of them have to wait till next year. Some of these poor Bolt owners, and they're not happy. They want to hand in their cars. They've had an opportunity to hand in their cars. Another thing is Chevy is making a Equinox that they claim next year will be under $30,000. The Equinox is a fairly big car as EVs go. It's much bigger than the Bolt. and it's potentially cheaper than the Bolt somehow. So it's interesting to see where they're going with that. I don't know what the future of the Bolt is actually going to be. A lot of people are wondering about that.
No, and I think this brings us to the next topic, because you're thinking about buying a Bolt EV, but of course you've been a Toyota owner for many years. And finally, Toyota has something that you could possibly buy, an EV that's coming out in the spring. Have you looked into that and considered that?
I have not considered it, Brian, because they're very expensive. It's not within the realm of possibility. The Bolt is really cheap by comparison. You can get one for 38,000 Canadian minus 5,000 plus taxes.
That's not bad.
That gets to be a lot cheaper. So the reviews were just released. They were embargoed. They let the YouTube reviewers look at them, and they lifted the embargo, I think, on the weekend. And so I delved into them. People are happy with it, but they're not, I wouldn't say in any way blown away. Some of them are quite frustrated because the high trim level gets extremely expensive, and you don't have a power passenger seat. And they say, well, for $60,000, you'd ought to have a power passenger seat. So it's a competent car. It looks Toyota-ish. It doesn't look weird, but it doesn't look incredibly sexy either. But it has a sort of people said from 100 paces it looked like a RAV4, and I guess it does in a way. But there's one thing that they have that I think is really cool. And this is an idea that I came up with myself, sitting in my cold car in winter as it was warming up on a very, very cold day. And that is radiant heat for your legs. Because your ass gets fried and your back gets fried by your seat heaters, but then your legs are sort of down there. And that's the one cold part if I don't dress warmly, and sometimes I don't. So they're putting there's no glove box, but there's just like a radiant heater panel, just, like 2 inches away from where your legs would be resting. And I think that's a great idea. I thought maybe in the floor and then radiate upwards, but if it puts out a fair bit of heat, but it's another way of saving energy by heating the cabin as well. Yeah,
because it's just heating the human body rather than heating the whole damn cabin. That should use less energy.
Because it's hard to heat a cabin, and once you start getting into bigger vehicles now, and Mercedes is coming out with a 3-row car at the end of the year, they're getting bigger now. They're starting to really get bigger. The trucks are coming out. So it gets harder to heat that air.
The Chevy Bolt is cheaper, so that's still what you're leaning towards.
Yes.
So maybe that means they can make the Chevy Equinox for that $30,000 price.
If they made an electric Bolt or an electric Equinox I hate Chevy. I don't even know what an Equinox is until now, but I see them around now. I notice them now, and I think that's a pretty good sized vehicle for under $30,000. That's electric. That does 250 miles of range or whatever, the kind of 400 kilometer deal that they're talking about. They would not be able to, if the charging rate was good, because the Chevy Bolt is 55 kilowatts, and that's not even consistent. That's like peak that you don't even get for very much.
Yeah, that's not quite fast enough.
It's pretty pathetic. If they get that figured out, it would be incredible vehicle. They would not be able to keep them on the lots because everybody's in North America buys that sort of vehicle at the least. So that would be something to be excited about, and it would suit us well for trips, and especially if it heated better. They are talking about coming out with the Bolt, the 2023 Bolt in the summer, and I was sort of hoping that maybe, there's some geeky people on these forums are saying all they need to do is change the wires that go between the charging port and the battery to a higher gauge, and the battery would be capable of charging faster, at least a little bit, and every bit counts on that, because it takes time off your trip. It doesn't matter for most people who are charging in the driveway. But also, Brian, the Chevy Canada website is updated, and so has the American. They've got $500 off in the United States and 3 years of 0% financing. It's doable. They're going to maybe have a hard time selling them, but they're planning on selling a lot of them. They said they're going to sell, I don't know how many, but it's a large number. So they're going to make them. That means they're probably going to incentivize them. And with high gas prices, maybe they'll sell without too much trouble. But they're already putting out ads. They've already put out ads for them.
Driving by the local car lots today, just this morning, and still the same story. All the major car lots don't have a lot of cars on them. The shortage continues.
No, and the Toyota advertisements now say it's red tag days. This is where we always buy our vehicles. And they say, order your Toyota today, not buy your Toyota today, order it today.
Yeah. I don't know. That's going to be a common thing now that people didn't used to pre-order cars, but this is going to be the most common thing in the next few years, especially with EVs, because as we know, this the band is high, supply is limited.
So they're doing pretty well, Toyota, with their BZ4X.
Yeah, terrible name. BZ4X.
If I can't get it right, and I host a podcast and I've mentioned it 1,000 times after all this 2 years, then it's BS. It should be the BS X.
The BS.
So it's almost as efficient as a Tesla. So they got the efficiency good. They did a good job with that. It's pretty big. It's just under the size of a Mach-E or a Model Y, just a tenth smaller than those models. And those are the largest in their class. The Y is the biggest. And it comes with a standard glass roof with a closing shade, unlike the Tesla, because that can be annoying, apparently. If you can't block out the sun, you don't have any choices.
I wear a hat in my Tesla.
Charges decently. In the four-wheel drive, it's 150 kilowatts charging for the highway, for fast charging. That's 30 minutes to get to 80%. If you're... I don't know if it's 10% or 0%, but it's about a 30-minute stop. It's not as good as a Hyundai Ioniq 5 or the EV6 from Kia. The range is 400 kilometers. That's okay. It's not. I mean, you kind of want to see maybe that sneak up a little bit, but that's the largest range. I think is 400 kilometers. So there's no larger battery option. You get an all-wheel drive variant, but yeah. So somebody found out that Tesla fast chargers might cost a quarter of what the competition does. I'm talking about the expensive fast chargers that you would have on a highway, or if you lived in an apartment, you might use them once a week or something like that. But they're expensive. They're DC fast chargers. They usually cost $200,000. And because Tesla was applying for money in, I believe, Texas or somewhere, as they were only asking for a certain amount of money, which sort of gave away their price. And it indicated that, wow, it's actually a quarter of what the other people cost. And that's amazing, because you and I have been talking for weeks now about maybe Tesla's the answer, because they're the only one. We're talking about broken. Our guest last week was talking about broken EV chargers, that they're never working. But the Tesla network is pretty solid.
So not only are these third-party chargers broken and not working, they cost a fortune, like $150,000 a charger.
Yeah.
And I guess it's just, I don't know, Tesla's been making them now for 10 years, so they've figured it out. These other ones are apparently expensive, I don't know, maybe hand-built kind of machines that, it's crazy.
And remember, they opened a supercharger factory in Shanghai, which spits these puppies out with right in the base. And I think they might assemble them in New York and put them in concrete. It just makes the whole process faster, and it's been quite fast. However, I did one of my favorite out-of-spec reviews is another YouTube channel. They're in Denver, and I kind of watch them because they test their trip for fuel efficiency. Is a trip that I've made several times in my life. It's between Cheyenne, Wyoming, and Denver. And so I'm familiar with that, so I always watch it. They found that when they went to Vegas with their Tesla, that there was a Saturday morning recently, a couple Saturdays ago, where there was 3 chargers available in the entire city of Las Vegas. Now, keep in mind, Las Vegas is a fairly substantial city. It is EV country because it's part of Los Angeles. People go to, with their California EVs to Vegas and back, and there's lots of infrastructure along those routes. And he could only find 3. So he was in line. He was in a big line on a Saturday morning. It wasn't a holiday weekend. There was nothing special about it at all. Yeah, so that's still a problem.
And these were the third-party type chargers in Vegas?
No, these were Tesla chargers.
Oh, the Tesla chargers.
Yes, these are Tesla. He has a Tesla Model 3, and he was in line with a bunch of Tesla people waiting.
Well, I would think the weekends for sure, but apparently during the week as well. But yeah, there's definitely going to be a lot of traffic between those two cities, probably all the time. So
at least you can check. You can check and see where the free chargers are. But, by the time we drove 15 minutes across the city, it might not be free anymore. They should have a factory for mass producing chargers. Why isn't anyone else doing that? We need chargers by the gazillions, and we're going to need them faster than they can make them. Why isn't there a factory? A big-ass factory making them as efficiently and as cheaply as possible and reliable chargers as well.
Yeah, well, as I said last week, Tesla sees this as a business opportunity, and I don't know, everyone else thinks it's some kind of a charity project or something? I don't know.
Yeah, so a Texas program which gives grants to install fast EV chargers as long as they support non-Tesla cars got applications by Tesla, and this was a first for Tesla in the United States, as their stations normally only charge Tesla cars. So the amount of the grants covers 70% of the cost of the chargers to a maximum of $150 per charge, but Tesla's applications were only asking for $30 per charger.
$30,000.
And the other applications were asking for the maximum $150. Wow. That would mean that Tesla superchargers cost no more than $43,000 per charger versus $200,000. I mean, I just woke up there. I just got a woke moment, Brian. That tells me, Tesla, go build a charging network. Governments, get them to do it. Open it up to third-party non-Tesla vehicles and make everybody happy, because no one else is capable right now. That's all I have to say. Hey, did you see the viral video of the Chevy Bolt from GM Super Cruise automation get pulled over by a police officer? Everybody's filming it because it's sort of on a nightclub street in San Francisco. Officer gets out, approaches the vehicle takes off.
Starts to drive away. That was pretty funny. That was great.
Apparently, for some reason, the stupid vehicle didn't have its lights on at night, which seems like a simple error for an automated vehicle to screw up. But I've been reading reports that people who went to the Tesla factory rodeo party opening were listening to people who were posting FSD full self-driving beta videos and saying, oh, this is so great. The same people were saying the damn thing doesn't work, that it's actually years away from operation, that they can't see it anytime soon when they're not officially talking on the YouTube channel being fanboys. So where do you stand on our monthly?
Well, it's all a matter of perception. I mean, sometimes you see those videos and they seem amazing and it seems like it's real close. And then you see another one and it's different kind of edge cases and it seems like, oh man, this is going to take forever.
Still no beta for Brian. Yeah, you're eligible, but you still haven't got it.
I'm still waiting. They seem to be handing it out in Canada at random. I'm eligible for it, but no, don't have it yet.
Well, that's a shame. Let's get to our oil ban. Oil ban.
All right. So the province of Quebec here in Canada has adopted a new law that will prohibit new hydrocarbon exploration. This is a really big deal, and they decided to pay off the oil and gas companies who are affected, companies who may have had leases or exploratory contracts or whatever those are. So to the tune of $100 million, they're paying out these oil companies to support this ban. The oil companies wanted $500 million. But the province gave them $100 million, and let's hope they're happy with a free $100 million.
Yeah, too bad. I wish people would, get strong about these things. Because you can't read the summary of a climate report and then go say, okay, let's do some more oil and gas exploration. I'm sorry, it's just we're in such a bad situation with the climate that we really have to not be talking about that BS.
It's urgent, and that's why we need those chargers built faster.
Yes, and we don't need any fossil fuel subsidies. We don't need subsidies to them like we're doing in Canada by giving them carbon capture, which just allows them to mine more fossil fuels. And that's not what we need. We don't need carbon capture because it's not working. It hasn't worked, and it's expensive technology still. Brian, the next story is from Drive Tesla Canada, and Mike, one of our listeners, pointed this out on Twitter. And this is one of those stories that I can't wait to talk about on the show. You know, I think, when's the next show? I can't wait to talk about this. This is the most awesome thing ever. Ontario is working on a new time of use for their electricity grid system for owners. In some places, you pay less, say between 11 and 6 a.m., 11 p.m. and 6 a.m., because there's less demand. It costs power utilities money to provide electricity during peak times when everybody comes home from work, turns on their heat, their ovens, their lights, their TVs, their computers. And that is a major expense for the power grid. So they charge you more and encourage you to be more economical during that time. They're controlling your behavior through price. Well, some people have this, and then they can charge their EV fairly cheaply at night, including in Ontario. But they're talking about making it ultra cheap. And why? For EVs, not for fun, but to encourage, as another way of encouraging EV adoption. They're talking about 2.5 cents per kilowatt hour in exchange for higher on-peak rates. So yes, you would charge more. And people say, well, some power grids can't handle EVs all happening at once. Well, if there is any problem with a power grid, this is how you handle it. You encourage people to charge at night, because your system can handle a lot more at 4, 6, 5 p.m. So it can do that at night too. You just have to encourage people to do that by charging them the right amount.
Now, and I have the perfect example for this, because I tend to come home and plug in my car to charge at like 4 or 5 p.m., which is, of course, peak electricity use, but we pay the same amount all day long, 24 hours a day. So I could actually set it on my app so that it charges overnight, but I just don't do it.
You're a bastard. I can't believe you don't do that.
Because I'm a bastard. And of course, but that means I'm paying the full rate. So like, this would be amazing. This means you could drive electric in Ontario for, 50 cents
practically
a day,
free.
$1 a day.
Practically free, man.
And I have to say, my electric bill has gone up a lot more than I expected it to. But of course it will if you're just paying the same rate 24 hours a day. This is great.
I only charge, I set my charger to charge by 8 a.m. So it finishes charging at 8 a.m. It does that whether it needs a half hour charging or 4 hours of charging. Usually it's not more than 4 hours. So I figured that the grid is cleaner at that time, because the hydro that we have in the province is there all the time. And so that I figured maybe the coal and gas would be less at that. However, I asked the power company on Twitter about that. Is the grid cleaner here? And they didn't get back to me. So we don't have time of day pricing, but we just got smart meters installed. So that would allow us to have that sort of price scheme in place. But 2.5 cents, Brian, is 70% lower than the current off-peak rate that they have. And even that's cheap, but it's 70% less than that. So that's incredible.
Yeah, no, we have a lot of listeners in Ontario, so this isn't finalized yet. No, this is only the proposed price. It isn't. But we think this is coming, and so to all of our listeners in Ontario, this is going to make driving an EV fantastic.
Yes, it will actually work to improve EV adoption, because the economics change. It's cheap to drive an EV now. Most people do it in Canada for about $30 a month, according to the CAA. Some less. And, I was thinking, all that kilometers to 26,000, that's about what we drive now between us, 2 cars. So when we do get a second EV, that's partially because of the pandemic and we're driving a bit less and doing a few less things, but, and also just not taking long vacations. But, it's amazing what solar can do and how cheap it is. Like, people just, people who spend $150 filling up something just can't conceive that it costs most people who drive EVs like $7, $8 to fill up. It's just crazy.
But imagine 50 cents in the future in Ontario.
50 cents. You can't fill up a bicycle for that much. I mean, come on. It's ridiculous. So the report noted that the new electricity plan would support EV adoption and drop overnight charging costs. And they suggest that companies would include the new plan alongside the existing time of use and tiered plans. So you wouldn't have to have this plan, but if you had an EV, you could opt for it. And this would give Ontario households a third option for the electricity plan. They have two right now. And in addition to cost savings to the consumer, the board noted that the new plan has the potential actually to save the electrical system $5.7 million a year. So it'll actually save the electrical system, the utilities, that much money by putting in this new plan. It's not going to cost them anything. It's going to actually save them money because of the way that people will use their electricity. So it could be available by a year from now if everything goes to plan. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's exciting. And I do have an update on, I'm trying to upgrade my house to a 200 amp service from 100 amp. And I'm making progress. They are going to, drill a hole underneath my deck and patio. So I don't have a date yet, but I will soon have, well, maybe not soon, but 200 amp power service soon.
Be sure to give us some pictures for our Twitter account. And by the way, the ultra low overnight rate there is 11 to 7 a.m. The mid-peak rates are weekdays 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. and 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. And the peak is 4 to 9, all the way to 9.
And that's 2.5 cents Canadian,
Yeah.
which is like under 2 cents American. That's super cheap.
Yeah.
So the Ford F-150 Lightning electric truck should be here by our next episode. They're going to start the deliveries on April the 26th. So this is a big deal. This has been waited for a long time. It's actually come sooner than I thought it would.
Yeah.
Of course, as is the common problem, there not going to be that many to go around, but certainly lots of people pre-ordered these and reserved them. And I'm looking forward to seeing some reviews soon.
I'm looking forward to seeing one, period. Because I have seen some pre-reviews of the prototype, and everybody was pretty happy with it. But these were people who don't drive trucks on a regular basis. I'm looking for the regular truck drivers who have been driving a truck for a couple of decades and then go to an electric to see what they say.
The companion story to this is that Ford has also announced that the Mustang Mach-E electric car is now sold out for the 2022 model year. So again, huge demand, but not enough supply.
And that leads me to another story that I'm always interested in because I do tow, remember, and these trucks are coming in. I fantasize, Brian, about owning one for towing because it would make it so easy. But do you have anything else to add on the Ford stories? So these people that I talk about at Out of Spec Reviews in Denver, they did a towing test with an F-150 hybrid, which is not the electric truck, but it's a hybrid. So it's got, you don't use all electricity when you're towing it. It keeps the engine on all the time. But they were testing out a Rivian R1T with towing, and they could not believe how wonderful it was to tow with an electric truck. Okay, so
that's great.
They did not. When you're towing, you are a tense person when you are towing. It's like launching the space shuttle into space. You are looking at all your gauges. You're looking for something to go wrong. You're waiting for rattles. You're looking at all your mirrors to make sure nothing's flying off. It's a tense thing, and you don't want. Like I've pulled into campgrounds many a time with hot transmission fluid shooting out of my van onto the campground, and then I have to scrape it all up and take it away in shame because the transmission overheated. Not a problem in an electric vehicle. And they said it was just amazing, and they just accelerated quickly and smoothly and didn't know the damn thing was there. You always know it's there. So they made a round trip, and they used premium gas. They always put premium gas in their test vehicles, so it was pretty expensive. But they did charts to see if it was cheaper to tow with an electric vehicle. And this is something that I assumed that it would be. Now, I'm well aware that you lose a lot. Your range is really low when you're towing with an electric vehicle. Especially, and they were towing a Model 3 actually in a vehicle that like a trailer that my Nissan Leaf arrived in from Montreal. Same thing, a big boxy thing that can hold cars. And so it's not aerodynamic, and it's quite heavy, and they did the test. So maybe it would be better with like a tent trailer or something smaller. But they found out that you didn't save any money with an EV. This is charging at public charging stations, by the way.
Yeah.
It wasn't charging at home. And when you're towing, you're talking about if you're not a business, you can charge at home or at a shop with a trailer. Then you're talking about RVing, going to campgrounds with a trailer. And in that case, you are going to be charging on the road, and you are going to be, electricity rates are actually fairly pricey at these fast chargers for the convenience.
Yeah. It's definitely more expensive than any home electricity, and you're paying for the convenience of getting it fast and everything. But I guess the EV just used that much more energy that, there was sort of a price parity.
Yeah, so it was for $37 US in premium gas to refill after their loop on the truck, and the electricity was $4 less than that, so $33. So that's about 12% or something like that. It is cheaper. It can be cheaper than premium gas. I have to put premium gas in my SUV. So it is a practical purpose. Some SUVs do take premium gas that are capable of towing. I don't know, and others take diesel. But I was quite surprised by that. So, but I wasn't thinking about price, saving money. I was thinking, well, actually, I thought I would save hundreds of dollars, because you do spend a lot of money towing. We go to the mountains in 8 hours or 9 hours to the Rocky Mountains, where Banff National Park is in Jasper. And you spend a lot of money towing. You're stopping at a gas station every hour and 20 minutes and spending a lot putting it back in there. And oil. I'm throwing oil in as well.
I drove my old Nissan Sentra across the country one time, and burned a lot of oil.
And it costs I buy my oil on sale, but it was still like $30 for, 5 liters to keep throwing in there. And transmission fluid sometimes. I don't have the best vehicles, but it is very expensive to tow, and I was hoping to save money, but it certainly would get rid of the you would start off with a charge at home, and I would leave with a charge at the campground, which wouldn't add any until campgrounds catch on to EVs. I would leave the campground with a full tank, and that would bring would be free, no extra.
Yeah, I know from my EV road trip experience, it really is a lot better if you can find a hotel that has EV chargers, so you can charge up overnight at the hotel.
Is there any directory for that? How do you find it?
It's just PlugShare, we've talked about before. PlugShare is the app where you find.
So you see it.
So yeah, when I was planning my trip to Toronto in May, I went on PlugShare and I looked for hotels or motels that had EV charging. And between here and Toronto, I think there's only one that I'm managing to sort of stay at. Unfortunately, there's
is it in Winnipeg?
Not as many. No, I'm not going to stay in Winnipeg, but and then sometimes you'll find a hotel that has an EV charger, and you look at it and you think, I don't want to stay there. And
there's a couple like that around here.
Yeah.
Well, PlugShare is an app that every EV driver should have, right? Because it shows you where all the. Sometimes you unfortunately have to use multiple apps for these things. You as a Tesla driver will be using your Tesla app as well.
For the most part, yeah.
Using your navigation as well. So
speaking of burning oil, it's time for the oil ban.
Oil ban.
Historic, Brian. Historic. 2 oil bans in 1 week.
Yeah, well, there's probably more that
sure.
we're just not talking about. But we've talked about electric school buses a lot because they're, ripe for electrification. And we've got 2 oil bans, or gas or diesel bans, if you want to call it that. New York State has now made plans for electric school buses. This is historic legislation. All new school bus purchases need to be zero emission by 2027, and all buses in operation fully electric by 2035. And then the city of Boston goes one step further, and their deadline is 2030. So these deadlines that we keep talking about for oil bans, they keep moving up, and this is great news. And it's really kind of horrific when you think about sending our kids to school in these diesel buses, which tend to then park at the school and leave themselves idling.
Yeah.
Well, it's just horrible.
Especially,
so this is great news.
Yeah, they do. You can't turn diesel off that easily. So, of course, that's what you're doing. You're leaving them running. And if I was a person who was just having a baby now and thinking, oh, great, well, it's still 8 years away before they become 100% electric. But diesel school buses is a no-brainer. And if people really study the facts on that, I think they would be advocating. They'd be going to their PTA meetings and demanding electric school buses because, and they're getting cheaper and more cost-effective on the ownership side too. We just need financing available to the companies that buy these buses, don't you think?
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Brian, it's time to sneak into the mailbag this week. I thought we would, let's see what we got in here. Okay, so I got a letter here that I find interesting because it's something that we've been talking about. And as a person buying an EV in the near future, this is very pertinent. By the way, lightning round's coming up, so don't forget about that. It'll be here later in the show. It says, hey guys, I found your podcast and I'm really enjoying it. Any thoughts on how rear-wheel drive vehicles handle winter road conditions? I live in northern Wisconsin and I'm considering upgrading from an ICE, that is an internal combustion engine, all-wheel drive RAV4 with all-season tires to an electric vehicle, a Ioniq EV, Ioniq 5 EV or EV6 from Kia. But I can't. But you can probably only afford the rear-wheel drive of those vehicles at the moment. Are people finding snow tires on a rear-wheel drive vehicle that is EV capable enough for northern winters? Northern winter creates some extra hurdles when trying to electrify everything. Glad I found you guys on the bleeding edge. Keep up the good work, Caleb. Thank you. What does it mean, bleeding edge, by the way?
I think that's good.
Is a good thing? Okay, we're on the bleeding edge. Brian, you have rear-wheel tires on your rear-wheel drive on your Tesla, so I'll let you talk about that. But I also got some feedback later on from people on Twitter.
Yeah, so when I first started buying winter tires, I went into my local tire dealer and asked him, okay, well, when is the switchover? Like, when do you put the winter tires on? And around here, the helpful thing to remember is Halloween and April Fool's Day.
Okay.
These are the switchover dates for us. So you put the winter tires on around Halloween, and then you take them off around April Fool's Day. And I absolutely did that this year. I took the winter tires off around April 1st. Cool. And what happened, James?
We got a huge dump of snow.
It's a
Colorado,
huge,
what do they call them? A Colorado something.
Colorado Clipper
or something like that.
I don't know.
Bomb or nuclear threat of snow.
It was a nasty blizzard in the middle of April. It was horrible.
And Winnipeg got it the worst, and they're getting it again all this week. So Winnipeg, if you're listening, you're probably not listening. You're probably just trying to survive. But it's April. I should be farming. I should be gardening the garden right now, pulling weeds and planting things.
And shout out to Toronto, which is also getting snow today, which is kind of unusual. But we take some pleasure in that.
You know, Brian, though, I want to interrupt you. It is 7 degrees, is winter tires, 7 degrees Celsius. When the high starts to regularly become above 7 degrees, that's when you're supposed to put on the summer tires. Are they all seasons? Because it's a temperature. It's a temperature, not a date. Because the temperature is the softness of the tire. Once it gets below 7, the winter tires are softer than all seasons. And if the winter tires are on warmer than that, then they wear out faster, I guess is the deal.
So I can tell you what happened was I have been driving around in the snow on my regular summer tires, and I did get stuck once in a parking lot. It was really annoying. There was just too much snow in the parking lot, and I had to go a little bit uphill, and I'm in my Tesla, and I'm trying to rock it back and forth, and I had to wait for people to walk by to come and push me out, and one of the guys says to me as he's pushing me out, guess Elon Musk wasn't thinking about Saskatchewan when he made this car.
You had to suffer that comment.
I had to suffer that comment, which is, of course, ridiculous because all cars get stuck in the snow if they don't have winter tires.
The fact that it's electric has nothing to do with it, you moron.
Nothing to do with it.
Yeah, heck. Yeah, neighbor of mine.
So I have these fantastic Hakkapeliitta 9 factory studded winter
The
tires.
only winter studded tires that you can buy from the factory.
Yeah, and I started using studded tires because we just seem to get more ice on our roads these last few years. We get a warm day in January, and then suddenly it's a skating rink until March when the snow melts. And it's a rear-wheel drive car, but absolutely no problem driving through the snow. I really think that good winter tires is the solution way more than four-wheel drive. It's obviously great to have four-wheel drive. It's better to have four-wheel drive, but good winter tires is absolutely the solution. Doesn't matter if it's front wheel or rear wheel. And on EVs, it always tends to work better either way, front or rear wheel drive, because EVs handle the traction control really well. Like, they have instantaneous control of the power.
And they're heavier.
The different wheels. And they're heavier. No problems at all, but I definitely recommend winter tires, really, for any car, electric or otherwise.
Yeah, well, I don't use winter tires because I'm cheap. I do have them. I'm too cheap to put them on because they came with my car. And I did find them when I drove them briefly better on ice. But I live on a Category 2 street. My street gets plowed 12 hours after it storms. And then, so I'm doing pretty well. It doesn't feel like it, but we had so much snow here that I could not shovel the part out between my driveway and the street. So when I came back from taking my daughter home from school, I had to hit that with momentum because I got a front wheel drive Leaf. And I just plowed through it, and my neighbor gives me the thumbs up. Good job, buddy. And he's the guy with the snowblower who didn't blow out my driveway like he could have. All he had to do was go a few more feet. But no, he turned around exactly at the property line, which is just rude. What's the world come to? Anyway, Brian, I asked this question on Twitter to see what other people think. Now, keep in mind that Brian and I live in a very cold climate here in Canada, but we don't get a lot of snow usually. When we get snow at this time of year, it tends to be wet. And it seems to be that in the Midwest and in southern Ontario, Midwestern United States, they get a lot of wet snow like we're getting right now at any time of the year when it's winter. So maybe they have to deal with this stuff. So Mike says they better get traction. They get better traction than normal cars, assuming it's because they're heavier. But I've seen rear-wheel drive Model 3 get hung up pretty easily in 6-inch snow with all-stock, all-season tires. That's Big Brian.
Yeah, which is what just happened to me in a parking lot.
It was you we saw. And get all-wheel drive if you can. My Model 3 is a tank with winter tires on, though.
But I can say the same thing for mine. Even though it's just rear-wheel drive, I can blast through anything with those good winter tires I've got.
Robert says, fun as hell if you like drifting, that is. Got my Ioniq 5 in January and had no real issues at all. Got stuck once in my own driveway because it was very slushy and I didn't have enough speed to get up the steepest part. That's me. Backed up, clicked on snow mode, and crept my way all the way up just fine. This is a person who actually owns the Ioniq 5. And by the way, you could get the RAV4 Prime. It is a very good vehicle, the RAV4 Prime.
Yep, plug-in hybrid.
Plug-in hybrid. So you do get, 60 kilometers of range or something like that.
Yep.
And then it kicks into, it would be the same vehicle. I'm not sure what that price is, though, by the time you get all-wheel drive in that version. So anyway, another guy named Virtual Tesla tweeted to us, both our cars are rear-wheel drive. You will need snow tires. With snow tires, never had an issue. It is also wicked fun to drive in the snow with the battery weight. Stock tires would get you stuck here in central Massachusetts. So this person is in central Massachusetts and different winter than the local people who've responded to us previously. So that's interesting. Thank you guys for responding to us on Twitter. I took your question and asked, and people gave back. Thank you guys. If you want to get a hold of us, contact us on email, cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. We're on Twitter and TikTok, Clean Energy Pod. Don't forget to check out our YouTube channel for special features, and you can also always leave us a voicemail message online at speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. All right, it's time for the lightning round. The lightning round is where we skim through headlines really quickly at the end of the show and have some fun going over some of the things we didn't have a chance to talk about in depth. And Brian, I was listening to yet another car review show in Vancouver, and you know what they had at the end? They had a lightning round. It was on the YouTube channel. I thought, you bastards. I know we didn't invent lightning round terminology, but for gosh sake, people, I still think people are stealing from us. So this is from Ars Technica. Wikipedia community votes to stop accepting cryptocurrency donations. Why? Because critics argue that the Bitcoin and Ethereum networks consume too much energy. So this is the first time I've heard of people sort of rebelling against crypto because of the energy use.
Yeah, that is a problem. I mean, at some point the grid will be clean enough so it won't matter. But yeah, maybe that's a good idea.
And I know some crypto mining places are setting up gobs of their own solar and things like that. And some argue that that will actually help the clean energy revolution. But I think that remains to be seen. Oh, here's a clean energy show fact, Brian. In 2016, there were 1 million EVs on the road globally. And by the second half of this year, in July, we'll be adding 1 million EVs every month. And by the second half of 2022, 1 EV will be added to the global fleet every 3 seconds. So every 3 seconds, somebody will not be using gas, hopefully. That's
fantastic.
That's a wonderful thing. And that's, of course, going to speed up even further.
And hopefully in 2022, one of those EVs will go to you.
Hoping, praying, thinking, maybe. I don't know. It's a long shot. There's so many things have to come together, but we're working on it. So Tesla removes the lease buyout option for all vehicles. Now, this is something that I was worried was going to happen to me, because when I searched and found that my Prius that we just leased for 5 years is now listed on lots for what we paid for it, MSRP 5 years ago, instead of, $15,000 cheaper, I was thinking, are they going to let us take this car? I was nervous. I was nervous to the point until we actually signed the paper that it was our car. Yeah. But now Tesla has said, yoink, you cannot buy out your Teslas because they're too valuable. What do you think?
Well, they're hedging their bets. I mean, they saw what happened to you and your Toyota Prius, and they thought, "Oh crap!"
I'm telling you, Brian, Elon listens to the show. I know he does.
Yeah, he must.
He's flying in his jet and going to sex clubs in Berlin, he's listening to our show in between stops. So, I think that's. I see that as dirty. You should have the option, because Toyota let me, Tesla, you made the commitment to buy the vehicle, you supported the company, and now you're getting screwed by the company, essentially.
Well, if you've signed the contract and you signed a contract that says you can buy it out, you can still do it. But
customer service dictates that I do that. And one thing I wanted to mention is that Toyota has often said in recent years that don't worry, if EVs ever take off, we can start making them really fast. Well, guess what? They have one. I can't afford it. It's not in my market range of price. It's a mid-level. They've lost a customer. They've lost a loyal customer. I'm happy with Toyota. I like the service of our local people here. I like the reliability of the product. And now I'm going to a different brand, a brand I hate. Chevy, I hate brand. I hate that brand. But at least they have some commitment to electric vehicles, or at least I tell myself when I try to sleep at night that GM has some commitment. I don't know, Brian. Sweden is the first country to target emissions from imported goods. That's interesting. I've not heard that one before. Do you think that's something that people will start doing and saying, well, if you're going to import something, you better not make emissions?
Oh, absolutely. And I think we've talked about this before. You can have your own little fantasy world and keep burning oil if you want, but that doesn't mean the rest of the world is going to play nice with you. For the second consecutive year, U.S. nuclear electricity generation has declined. The output from the U.S. nuclear power plants was 1.5% less than the previous year, and the share of nuclear on the U.S. grid is still 19%. 6 nuclear generating stations have retired since the end of 2017, and there's 3 more that are about to retire too. So nuclear, like it or not, is on the decline, and it's going to take them a miracle to revive it if it does happen. Oh, by the way, we were talking about that GM autonomous taxi, which happened to be a Chevy Bolt pulled over. Well, they're saying that they will sell personal self-driving vehicles, that is without a steering wheel, by the mid-2020s, which is like 4 years away. Apparently, though, they just won't be law-abiding. Maybe they'll get that right one day. This would be a good plot for a movie.
Could you imagine being in the back of a robo-taxi Uber and the police are chasing you because there's something wrong, and I didn't do anything. I'm just a passenger. And then you get shot. You're reaching for your ID or something. Elon Musk claims Tesla owners have super low usage of the included mobile charging cable. But stats show otherwise, according to an electric article. I've taken my charger actually out of the car. That's a 110-volt charging cable. So if I ran out somewhere and I was at a Wendy's or somewhere, I would plug into an employee lot thing and just start charging, or if I was at a friend's house.
Yeah, and it's probably okay that Tesla's no longer including this for free. It's just they didn't communicate this issue very well, and you just got to make sure that you check the box now that's on the website if you want one of these mobile chargers. But Tesla's going to make 1.5 million or 2 million cars this year. So if they can, not include 100,000 or 200,000 chargers, it's going to save a lot of waste and save everybody more money.
I get that, but the usage says that people are using it, and people are. They've jokingly compared to being Tesla going full Apple because Apple is notorious for not including charging cables anymore.
Yeah, they've recently stopped including chargers, but well, as with phones, like most people have like a dozen phone chargers in their homes now, so this is starting to happen now with electric cars. There's households with more than one Tesla, so maybe they don't need the charger.
Well, that's our time for this week. It's been fun doing a regular show with you guys again and catching up on the climate news and having a conversation about all that. Share our show on social media, if you don't mind, to help us grow. Have a wonderful Earth Day this April 22nd, and I will be out at the Drive Electric Week event on April 23rd in Regina, and hope to see some of you there, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.